Hello everyone and welcome to Handmade Hero, the show where we code a complete game live on stream. It is day 271 here, or hour 271. I don't know that we have a tally of hours because there's been a couple of times when we've done like a 4-hour stream, so it's probably actually hour 280 or 290. But yesterday I think I accidentally started programming some game code. I don't super like game code. I think I've said this before. I like engine programming, and so, one of the things you have to do if you're shipping a game by yourself is you have to write the game code as well, so what are you going to do? So I started doing that, and I think I'm going to go ahead and finish doing some of that stuff, and that's also useful engine-wise as well anyway, because everything else that we do probably from now on is going to be pretty heavily dependent on the game, and so, I don't want to... like all the rest of our engine work, I think, will be based on exactly how it's getting used in the game. So we'll be like getting the game up and running. We'll see what's slow and what works and what doesn't work, and we'll like improve the engine components based on that. Because I think in terms of general stuff, we've got everything in there that we would normally have. And so it's just a question of like driving things forward by having specific use cases. So if you want to follow along at home, today's day 271, so day 270's code is the code that you're going to want to unpack and start with, and that's where I am at the moment. Now, if you remember from yesterday what I was talking about when I was like, I want to get the movement code working and then some of the world generation stuff working, what I was trying to explain and what we sort of started to implement as well, I started cleaning some stuff up, is that I want to have specific locations in the world that you stand on. And unlike even a traditional tile-mapped game, these really don't have very much to do with the graphics necessarily, although we are going to want to reinforce them by making sure the graphics clearly show you where the places are you can stand. But that's a game design concern, not an engine technology concern. What we want to do here is I want to make it so that you literally stand directly on these points. And when you move, you choose to move between these points specifically, and you're either on one or the other when you come to rest. So you're not allowed to come to rest like in the middle, right? You can't stand in between those 2 points. Obviously, to get from one to the other, you will cross between them, but you won't ever like land here. You have to land here or here. And so the way that we've got things right now, right, all we do is just move kind of a sprite around. So what we need to do is we need to sort of improve that way in which the movement happens so that we're going to like move around in that way. And that's what I want to sort of get working, and I want to sort of start to build out the little world environments so that I can have some examples of moving around and places to start rendering and that sort of stuff. So right now we're drawing those points in the world that I've created, and those points are attached to entities. So essentially we've got entities that represent places you stand, and those places that you stand have these sort of traversable points marked on them. And so as you move around, the idea is that wherever you're going to go to one of those traversable points. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to sort of modify the way that the hero moves a little bit, and it's going to be a little bit terrifying at first, to say the least. So what I'm going to do here is I am going to essentially dissociate the hero head and the hero body, if that makes sense. So when I come into Handmade World mode here, what I want to do is I want to, we add, right, one of these hero things. Whenever somebody joins the game, whenever a hero joins the game, we were currently adding one of these hero entities. And I believe, actually, to be honest with you, I don't really remember. It's been a long time. I don't super remember how we chose to mark that. But I believe it was just called hero. Yeah, so we add one of these entity type heroes. So if you take a look, let's see here. Entity type hero. Where are we at? It's here. So when we do an add player, you can see that we do a thing where we say like, okay, we added an entity, we add an entity type hero, and that entity type hero is just one entity. And what I kind of want to do here is say that there's two separate entity types that I'm kind of deal with here that are going to be a little different. There's essentially an entity type hero and an like hero body and an entity type hero head, if that makes sense. And I know it's a little bit strange. To be honest, I guess I don't... I guess here's the thing. There's two ways I guess I can do it. Maybe I'll keep it as one entity. I can make it two entities or one, and I'm not sure which one makes more sense. I feel like two is better. I'm just going to say it's two. So I'm going to make a hero body and a hero head, just for now. And so when you add these to the game, I'm going to say that you get both of them, right? So I'm going to add a hero head and a hero body, and those are going to be added separately. And I'm going to actually change these like player collision things to be a little bit different, so that the hero head has a collision that's high and the hero body has a collision that's low, if that makes sense. Yeah, and so when we actually record the entity, I'm going to say that the hero body is the thing that has the information on it for now, and I'm not going to actually put any more information on this for the time being, although, we could do a little more. But we're going to do the entity system probably coming up soon here, and this stuff will all change, because this is pretty, basic right now and really just there for us to sort of get things working. So when I do this, I'm now going to have some compile errors because there's stuff that depends on this sort of thing. Again, I don't know too much if we care about this breakpoint, but we'll leave it in there for now. And when we're looking here, you can see how the control works. I'm just going to make it so the hero head is actually the thing that you control pretty much the entire time. And I'm going to say that the hero body is the thing for now that the familiar looks for. And then here we've got our entity type hero head. Again, same thing here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to not push the rest of the bitmaps on. So, for example, I can, in fact, I'll just split them for now, I guess, right? So here's my entity type hero body, and that will actually push the other things on there, like so. And yeah, we won't draw the hit points on the head. So here's the shadow, here's the torso, here's the cape, but the head is gone, and then this one will probably not have any of these at the moment, and we'll just push just that head on so that we can see it. And the particle code, I think, needs to not be right here, because this is kind of annoying. So the hero head particle code is going to go away, and we'll just put that in a file somewhere. Do we have a file that we could put that in somewhere? Well, you know what I could do? I can just put it down here, in case we ever want it again. Right? And so now the problem that I'm going to face is these things are going to be overlapping and kind of colliding with each other, so I won't really be able to actually use it the way that I would like, because I'll just be constantly colliding, so I can't actually move. So what I need to do is I need to fix the colliders for these two entities. You can see here that we've got like player collision. What I really want to call this is like hero body collision and like hero head collision. And so in the places where we were storing these, where we have kind of player collision and, I'm going to do hero head and hero body, and then we can make that more explicit. So here's hero head collision, here's hero body collision. And I want to make sure that I don't really, all of this stuff we should probably start to work at, but again, I'm kind of taking it one step at a time as I pull it up into the place where it's actually doing what we want. for the game. So this may not be the best way to make collision volumes either, because they're kind of a little bit spec'd weirdly. But anyway, the hero head collision and the hero body collision, this was the height of the thing before, and, I don't know how big we want them each to be, but I feel like since it's kind of a little bit, fungible there, I'm going to say that, like, the body is 6, and the head is, like, 4 or whatever, and maybe there's 0.2 in between them, I don't know, right? I'm not sure how we actually want that to work out. Maybe there's only 0.1 in between them, something like this. Okay. And so when we now talk about the hero head, the hero head itself, I want that. I don't really want the grounded collision thing, because it's actually up off the ground, right, is where the head is. So add grounded. Let's see here. Where is that? Simple grounded collision? There it is. So one of these grounded collision things, the problem with it is I don't really want it to be on the ground, but as you can kind of see, it is going to be on the ground because of the way that the offset P stuff works, right? So it's going to be, I want to now raise it up by that displacement, which what I couldn't do, I can sort of make a displacement here, but I guess what I probably would want to do instead is just make something that's, I don't really know what I want to do, to be honest. I'm going to put an offset Z in here just for no apparent reason. So if we want to lift it off the ground, we can. Make simple grounded collision. And so in here, when we do the hero head, since it's 0.6 off the ground, I'm going to go ahead and say, yeah, it's 0.7, I guess, because it's got that one bit of displacement. And so now, in theory, they should be disconnected. Now, okay. So now I still can't move those, so I didn't quite get everything right there. So let's go see what the problem is there. So hero head collision. I just want to make sure this is set up properly. The hero head has the hero head collision. The hero body has the hero body collision. Right? Right. And the body's got the hit points at the moment, which is what I wanted. And let's see, the camera is following the body, which seems okay. And I'm going to now go see what the deal is with my hero head. So in the hero head, here's where we loop over the controllers, and we look to see... This is kind of weird. But anyway, like I said, all this stuff now will start to clean up, so it's okay if it's weird. I'm just looking through here. So if we have the hero head, I'm not sure we just take the DDP and we're adding it to it. And I guess that's all fine, because the DDP is presumably applied, yeah, at the bottom. So there's the move entity call, right? And the move entity call is just going to try and move by that DDP. So we're definitely trying to move by the DDP. And so the question is, why are we colliding with anything? So the first thing that I want to do is I want to verify my assumptions, or rather, I want to test to see whether the collision volumes are what's preventing me from doing this. And so what I might do is say, let's assume that the body at the moment, the hero body collision, is actually not a collider. And so now there's only the hero head, and so in theory, I feel like that would make it so that if collision was our problem, the head would move. And the head is not moving, right? So it seems to me that is just broken, right? And that something else is broken that's not necessarily the collision that I accidentally changed there. And, you know, I could also say here, I suppose, if they're both null. So now these cannot collide with anything. They can just move around. In theory, they'll just move. Yeah, and again, no movement at all. In fact, no control of any kind. So I think something's still busted there, and I'm not sure what the deal is with that. So, well, actually, you know what? Let me add this back in case that's also a problem. We'll just take it out of the equation for now. So when we call add player here, and we're going to do adding these entities here, we add the hero body. Ah, that's the problem. The thing that we return is what the controller is going to control. So that's probably the issue right there. So although this is the thing we wanted, yeah, although we wanted the body to be the thing that we had the hit points on, right, and that sort of thing, I kind of have to make it so that the rest of this stuff isn't that way. So this is going to be, right, that's going to be body. And then here's add low entity result, head. And the head is what's actually going to get returned here. Let's see what else we've got. This is body. And that was a bug as well there too. Okay, so this is head, I guess, but the sword is not. Our hero doesn't even have a sword, so I'm not sure why that's even there anymore, but I guess that's beside the point. Anyway, so we're going to follow the body, like I said, for now, and that seems fine. So now we should be connected properly. At least I hope. Oh, famous last words, and we totally aren't. So wait, head is the head, and we are returning the head, right? So when we do add player, that should capture the head properly, right? Yeah, there's entity index right there. So in theory, the conhero entity index should be now set to whatever that head index is, right? Which was obviously a bug from before because we weren't, we weren't actually using it. So, all right. So in here, what did I do wrong? What more did I do wrong? Let's see. So we tried to add a grounded entity for the hero body and for the hero head. We track them both as body and head. We add the flags for, nope. That would do it. Okay. All right, good. So now we have head that can move around, which is always good. Very, very important. And now what I want to do is I want the body to follow the head, if that makes sense. So as the head moves around, I want the body to move with it. But what I want to do is I want to make it so that when the body moves, the body only moves to traversables. So, you know, the head, as the head moves, I want the body to just go to the closest, like the closest traversable to where the head is, if that makes sense. So I'm going to start by essentially cheating that out. So during the sim, I'm actually going to make this be quite a bit, like I'm going to make this be super crappy and not the way that I want or anything, but I just want to get it working in a basic capacity. So when we go through and do the simulation on these guys, when we do the simulation on the hero head and we're just moving him around, right, which is here, then what I want to do is whenever we're simulating one of the hero body things, I want it to just look to see for the other entities that are in the world, and this is going to be the same kind of to-do. Basically, we're doing exactly the same thing here, but instead of searching the entities for entities which we want to follow or things like that, instead what I'm going to search for is I'm going to search for any kind of traversable point. So I'm just going to search through the entities to try and find... By the way, why is test entity index kept here? Oh, I guess it's just for this. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, so as we go through these test entities, I want to see whether or not my corresponding hero head is in there, and then I want to follow it. Now, I'm sorry, that's not, what am I talking about? I want to take a look to see if any of these things have collision volumes that have traversable points in them, if that makes sense. So we're going to essentially go through all of those. Now, I believe everyone has to have a collision volume. So really all I'm going to do here is say, like, point index, and I want this to be less than the volume. Let's go ahead and jump in here. So we're going to have one of these collision value groups. I'm going to go through the traversable points that are here, right? And those traversable points are the things I'm going to check. So I've got the traversable count here. I'm going to get the sim entity traversable point out of it. Sim entity traversable point. And yeah, I guess this is actually the group. And I'm just going to say, okay, whatever this vol group's traversables is, I'm going to add the p-index to that, and that's the one I'm going to check here. And I'm going to see if this p-index is closer than mine, right? So I'm going to say whatever this entity's position is, right, plus its position this way. And really that's a thing that could rotate and do other things. So we probably want to get in the habit of actually getting these sort of transformed for us. So we probably want this way, or like sim space traversable or something like that. So I probably want to say, like, okay, in this sim space, I want to take, you know, this entity, and I want to get this particular traversable out of them, right? And then I want that to transform it for me by whatever the entity sort of transform stuff is. And so once I have one of those points, what I can do is I can test to see how close it is to my head, right? Wherever my head actually is, which does require me knowing what my attached head is, if that makes sense. And so that's something that we're going to want to store, presumably. So in here, oops. If I want the attached head is going to be something that we'll figure out in a second. And I'm going to know what its p is. So I'm just going to assume that, like, my best distance is real 32 maximum, right? I'm going to assume that my best distance is very far away, and my best p is whatever my current p is. So my entity p is that, right? So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, all right, we're assuming that we have the head. I'm going to say, here's my test point. I want to get the distance squared, and I guess this is, I'll just do distance squared here, right? So it's exactly the same code as this. In fact, it's literally this exact code. This is all I'm doing. I'm just saying, like, all right, go through here and say, for this point, I want to take the distance from wherever my head was to wherever this point is that we're talking about here. And I want that to be considered the closest point to stand on, right? Now, there is, I guess, a caveat here, which is that the point can't be above the hero's head, because then I'd be up, like, so it has to be below the hero's head. So it probably would also say, if the z position, if the z position of the head was, or I should say, if the z position of the traversable, so whatever that z value is greater than wherever the head placement was, I would ignore it. Although, you know what, I'm not going to put that in just yet, because since we're still a little ad hoc with coordinates, I think that's only going to make things worse. We'll take care of that. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. All right, so anyway, I'm going to take the length squared here. I'm going to say that we have the closest distance squared and the closest p. So here's my closest distance squared, and my closest p is going to be equal to that p that we're looking at, the one we're talking about, and the closest distance squared is going to be the test distance squared. So once we have that, I'm just going to go ahead and set that. So for now, we're not going to try to do any animation to it. I'm just going to literally say, to get it working first, I want to take whatever my position is, and I'm just going to cold set myself directly to it, right? So that's all I'm going to do. Okay. So, yeah. So now, when we go through here and we say, what's the head? Because that's going to be our main problem here, right? Is our head does not, we don't know what our own head is. Because our volume group, collision volume group, is actually fine. We do know where that is. That's just this thing. Right, there's collision. So our sim entity collision volume group is just that. So the question is, where is the head entity, right? And so the way that I'm going to do that, again, from now, is I'm just going to use, we do have this entity reference concept, but again, that's probably, all this is going to get changed. But so I'm just going to put entity reference head in here. And again, that's on all entities. So keep in mind, like that means even your head has a head reference, which again, obviously, like I said, we're going to be redoing that stuff. So we'll talk more about how that sort of stuff works a little bit later on. But anyway, for now, we don't care. We just want something that works reasonably. And so in order to get the sword, you can kind of see here how this works. Really all we have to do, because those references, I guess, work in a particular way, all we have to do is say, okay, the head entity is just going to be whatever our entity's head pointer is. It should give us back that, and we're going to assume that we have one. If we don't have one, like if we just don't have a head because our head got chopped off or something, maybe we would use some other code here, right? But for now, we'll just stay stationary if we can't find our head. And so inside our sim entity stuff, you can see where the sword thing happens is actually some code that makes this happen. You can see the decompression step stuff here, how that works. You can see store entity reference and load entity reference. Those are both things that need to actually happen. So in here, we need to do a load entity reference, world mode, sim region, entity head, and same thing below. Store entity reference, stored sim head. So now all we really have to do is implement this, and this is pretty straightforward actually right now, because we actually don't have the concept of entity rotation in here at all, right? So sim region itself, we can sort of have in here this concept that there's a way to get the traversable back, and this is a really simple operation. All this is saying is that if you take a sim entity and one of these indexes, you can basically take the sim entity traversable point that you would get if you looked at the collision group. And we can assert here that this index is within the range that's allowed, because we know the traversable count, so we might as well say, hey, make sure that's actually valid. When we get this result out, we can then take the p that it has, and we're just going to transform it by offsetting by the entity's p. And we could say, like, you know, to do this wants to be rotated eventually. because at some point we probably want the concept that entities can turn and that their points that you would stand on would turn. Like if you imagine maybe there's some like platform with some points you can stand on and it's kind of moving throughout the world, right? It makes sense to say that that's, you know, going to rotate or spin potentially. So okay, we've got this traversable count situation, and oops. Now we've done that transform. So now let's see if we can get the body moving the way that the body should move. The other thing that I would like to do, by the way, well, there's one other thing we have to do, which is actually set up that head reference, because we've not told the body about its head yet. Kind of a funny phrase, but so if I go back to world mode where we do add player, right, where we construct one of these things, we've got this sort of body head situation, and what I want to do here is exactly the same thing that was done here. I want to say like, oh, okay, the body's low sim head index is going to be the head's index, so now it knows which one it's talking about. And so there we go. Textures. I don't know what's going on with those textures. What's going on? We're caught in a loop. Oh, that's good. Yeah, turns out for loops don't really work super well. This is just a pro tip, you know, from an experienced programmer. Sometimes if you don't increment the variable in the for loop, it won't work as well. I mean, I don't know, like it's probably some bug in the CPU or something, you know, but like you gotta increment it or something. I don't know, it's stupid. Oh hey, that works actually exactly the way I wanted to, but unfortunately I'm setting the camera up to move in the old style way. So what I actually don't want that anymore. I want the camera to stay room-based. Yeah. Okay. So now we've got that working much more like I wanted it to work, actually. That's quite nice, actually. Yes. And so in theory, too, the other thing that's nice is this is not based on the grid. So this is actually something that works regardless of whether there's a grid or not, right? And it's also kind of nice in that the body won't follow beyond where there are actually traversable points, which is also kind of good. So that's fine. You know what I also should do, though? I should also re-enable the collision for the things that collide. Player collision. There we go. Okay. So for the things that collide here, now we've got that. Oh, and let me go ahead and set this permanently to room based. So that's global renderer camera room based. I don't actually know where we set that room based. Is it in the sim region? Yeah, so is that in config.h, I guess? So we just need to say that the room-based stuff is true now. All right, so yeah, so much better. So now when we start up, it should be fine. The other thing that I'm going to do, that I would like to do, is when we actually start up right now, one of the things that we're doing is we're going into the cutscene. But since we're working on the game part of the game right now, I would like to make it so that we start up directly into the game, because that's going to make it like save me a lot of time when I'm starting up, right? So what I'd like to do too is, you know, you got this game state game mode here, right? And by default, it does the play intro cutscene. And so that's all fine and good, but I'm just like, that's what it should be. It's just for now, I would rather make it be like play game or whatever. In fact, I don't even remember what it actually is to start that. It's like, what is it? Play title screen, play world, that's what it's called. So I'm just going to call play world at the outset instead, so that when we start, we're just looking at the game directly, hopefully, anyway. What is the problem? Does play... I thought play world would set up the world. Is that not true? That should set up the world for us, should it not? Although that does always come inside here. But I don't think that should have mattered. I'm going to have to see what that... Because I think this should be allowed. And so the fact that that doesn't work is bad. So let's fix that. So the problem here is that world mode is null. And I'm not sure why. Let's jump in here. So there's world mode. When does it actually set game state world mode? That strikes me as a little bit peculiar. Because here it is creating world mode. We come through here, we create a bunch of stuff that we need to make the world, and so that's great. You know, everyone's happy. And that's fine. But after we do that, I don't see us actually assigning it ever to the actual world mode variable. So how did this ever happen? How is that world mode supposed to get communicated? I'm super confused. Hopefully I'm not the only person who thinks that's confusing. So let's take a look here. So you can see update and render world, it passes game state world mode. But I don't know when people write to game state world mode. The answer is never. So how is this ever working? Does someone want to explain that to me? This is weird enough that I just want to make sure we know why. So here's the old version. Let's go ahead and run it. And here's me launching the game. And the game is working. Right? We can all agree on that, I think. So my question is, all right, how was who is actually initializing this? And so let's actually, in fact, we talked about data breakpoints when we were talking about debugging. Let's actually use a data breakpoint here to find out how that was ever happening. So let's say we come down here, and right now I've got my game state. And presumably world mode is not valid, right? Like there's nothing in it, although there is a pointer to a world mode. So the actual mode itself exists, but the world pointer does not. Right? Let me jump back over here as well. So here is world mode, SVP. Right, because it does a push struct here, and it pushes on this world mode, but I don't know why. In fact, let's go into the cutscene just for 1 second too. I want to see how this one does it. You can see like this like sets it, right? And this one too, like it sets it up. So I don't even know, I want to know too, like whoever set this up at all. Why is there even a pointer in there in the first place? I'm going to start all the way back. Like, when did that happen? I guess the game mode... Yeah, I don't know. So I'm gonna start all the way back to the beginning. So here we go. We have not initialized the game state, so we're going to initialize the game state now. So here's the game state, and the world mode has nothing in it. So we come through here, there's nothing in it, still nothing. So the world mode is just empty, which is what we would have expected it to be. We create some stuff for our tasks, transient modes, all that stuff. It's all good. We create some environment maps, which was not even things we use anymore, but they're there. Good for them. We put some debug arenas in place just for fun, where we print them out, and then we actually start going on with our situation. Oh, okay. That's just a union. So that's fine. That's actually totally fine. So that's crazy. So I know exactly how this is working now. That's just super accidental. So here's what actually happened. What actually happened is it just so happens that if we've already allocated the other mode, we happen to put ourselves in exactly the same place, so we didn't have to set the pointer. Like, I bet this just turns in this address is exactly where it happens to push the other mode. Let's find out. So here's our cutscene. We're running along, right? And I start it up, and now I want to know, hey, where is that world mode? Hey, look, it's exactly the same place. So that was pure luck. There's actually a total line of missing code that's incredibly important that's straight up not there. This exactly, needs to be in here. Right? So here's it working now. And then if I was to change back to what I wanted to do before, oops, yeah, that was right. Turn off the cutscene, now it should actually work because someone's actually setting that value. Although that actually did not go to the world mode. That went to the title screen. We are setting the game mode to world. So in theory, that should call this. Yeah? And I'm not hitting escape or anything. Oh, but you know what? When there's no players, we just revert back to the title screen. So I guess there is a problem of we'll enter game mode and then go back to title screen because there's no players. So I guess that is a little bit of a problem. How are we getting around that, though? I guess, were we just counting on the fact that you happen to push the same button? Because it seems like, yeah, all we're doing here is we're like, hey, this guy started and he's going to start playing the game. So then in the other code, in world mode, it hasn't, no one's actually joined the game yet, right? And so what happens is when it gets down to the bottom, I think it's just like, oh, like, there's no heroes. So go back to the title screen, which is exactly what it does. So I guess I need to also force it to start a new hero. Which I guess actually isn't that hard. Because I can do, like, I can force an initial controller press of start if I want to. So that's not really a huge deal. But we may want to, I don't know, if, since this is only really for debug, I suppose that's not really a huge deal, but still. It's not great. Probably want to make it more formal, so I can say, like, play world and add player. But, you know, I can do this and say, like, controller, you know, back, like, ended down or something. So I could, in theory, force it to be like, oh yeah, and by the way, someone pushed start, right? And I'm not sure if I can actually get away with that exactly, but I should be able to do something. So let's see. Oh, it's actually, sorry, not back, start. So I'm basically just like overwriting the actual input with the start button so that it adds one hero. So it's as if someone pushed start. And I suppose for that matter, technically, that means that really you can actually have play cutscene have actually happened. And we don't actually have to call play world. What I can do is just say like, oh, you know, if I want to like force the start button to be pressed, I just force the start button to be pressed. And we actually start in the game, even though we don't force it to start with the other mode. So that's fine. I'm fine with that. All right. So now I'm just going to say, well, okay, like, I kind of want to see, I want to see what our DT per frame is here. I want to check out the DT per frame. Also, somebody reported a bug that is relevant here. I don't know if I can go to GitHub. Can I? Sign in. There we go. So if I'm here on GitHub, how do I get to the issues? Issues. There it is. So someone was saying that DT for frame calc has 1 over mono refresh rate over 2. This is off by a factor of 2 or more if vsync is disabled. So that, I think that means that we're passing, probably because of something debug oriented or, you know, whatever that we were doing. Yeah, so this was a good catch by Kim. Because this was just some stuff that we were sort of hacking in there and before we ever did vsync or any of that sort of stuff. And we really want this to actually start passing an accurate value. Because if we're going to start making game code, we need to sort of have the game running at the proper frame rate, right? So what we need to do now is say that, well, the game update hertz is going to be whatever it is for now, right? Let's see where this actually gets used. Target seconds per frame. Yeah. So at the moment, if we're just always on vsync, which we are for all of our testing purposes, that should be the actual amount. That's correct. Yeah. So it was a little bit spastic before. Of course, that also means our cutscene timing is probably off. Well, that actually kind of looks fine. We don't really have any... We haven't tried to sync the cutscene to an audio track or anything like that yet, so... I guess it's going to depend, the speed of each of these things is going to depend entirely on how we want, how we decide to, or rather how long the audio ends up being. All right, so that's actually more the speed that I thought it should be as well, so that's good. I'm glad we got that squared away, if that makes sense. But I guess I'm almost out of time, so I'll probably end it there. But I also just want to do a little bit of a test here with the hero's body. I want to see what happens if I animate him a little bit from point to point, right? So let's say in here in world mode .cpp, and here's my sim region. So I'm going to go ahead and say, like, okay, I've got the P, and I'm just going to say that there's, like, well, I guess, you know what, I can even just do it in a simpler fashion. For now, I guess all I really do is I'm just going to run that code that was on the familiar. So you can see that we had this sort of DP is based on the distance from the hero kind of thing. And I guess we just set the move spec for this guy. I'm going to set those all for the hero body. So assuming that we had the head, what I'm going to do is I'm going to, instead of setting the entity's P to the closest P, I'm just going to use the exact same code that we were using before. And I'm not going to do any of this stuff. I'm just going to say, like, whatever it was, it's going to be doing the square root. Of course, this value, we need to make sure we actually we need to make sure we actually found somebody, because otherwise this square root term will be kind of ridiculous, right? Because this will be real 32 maximum. So yeah, I mean, we could make this close distance squared be some thing that was like, we don't ever want to move if the head gets further than this away, right? We could say, like, oh, if it's more than 1,000 meters away, then obviously it's not going to happen, and then this term won't blow up and it'll be fine. So that's probably fine as well. So I want to take a look at this. Hello, Mr. Movement. So my DDP close P minus entity P. Why are you not accelerating? And I'm not sure. Why aren't you accelerating? Is this because of the collision? Are you colliding with something right now? I don't actually know. I'm going to turn off your collision for now. Let's see. To turn off your collision would be pretty simple. I would just say that the entity collision equals world mode null collision, right? So it's not a collision problem. You're not colliding with anything. But you're also not going anywhere. Why aren't you going anywhere? Boop. Okay, so let's take a look at what the various p-values are. So there's closest p and entity p. Yeah, so those are like nothing like each other. And so in theory, that should be enough to move the guy. So what's the DDP? The DDP is a totally valid value. I'm not sure. So that should have worked. Is movable not set? Movable set. So what's the problem? So he's moving at that speed. Whoa. Move spec drag times entity dp. My entity dp is complete garbage. How did that happen? So something went horribly wrong. Closest distance squared is whatever this is. So something bad happened there. Let's take a look at the first time through this loop. Hopefully before that ever gets messed up. So let's jump in here. So here's the first time through. Oh, duh. When they're right on top of each other, that wouldn't work either. Right. Okay. So that was just me being stupid. If these things are too close together, then obviously it can't move. So I do still want that ability, right? So that was me being dumb. So the closest distance squared, that closest distance does have to be. We were checking to make sure it wasn't too close, and I just spaced on that for some reason. Okay, so now if I'm gonna want to animate that a much better, but I just want to kind of see what that ends up being like. So if we assume, I don't know what acceleration has to do with it, because this is actually the thing that determines the speed. So I'm not sure. I feel like the familiar code was a little bit janky in that case, because it doesn't really need to do what it's doing here. And in fact, none of this stuff really makes any sense, because this code takes care of all this. So really, this is irrelevant to some degree, I think, right? I'm pretty sure that actually this doesn't ever need to happen. I think you can just say that this is what you actually wanted the DDP to be. In fact, I don't know, can you just do this directly and just say that's what this is? I feel like you can, yeah. That's what I thought. So that familiar code is just stupid. I don't know why it was bothering, because that code actually does it for it. Okay. And so if I want to, I can make this guy track pretty closely, right? If I make this drag, relatively high, I can make it probably feel pretty neat there. That might be a little too high, though. So that's roughly what I wanted. And so, like, we're going to have to make that animate correctly. But in terms of, like, actually the speed at which this was going to go, that's roughly what I had envisioned. And I think that's going to be fine. Yeah. So there's a couple other things in here which we'll try tomorrow, just in terms of getting this guy going. But that seems to be working relatively well, in that I can move around just fine, and you know, my body will track me, but it will never, my body will never come to rest on anything that isn't one of these traversables. And so then really the only other thing I need to do, other than working on animation for how that's going to, for making that look nice, because obviously we don't want like a detached head and all that. But all I really need to do now is just make it so that this, I want the head to snap back to the body when you stop pushing. So when I'm pushing, right, like around, this is correct, but then when I let go, I want it to come back to where it would normally be neutral, if that makes sense. So, all right. Let's go to the Q&A. Yunfan, when I write event-driven code, I am often forced to use dynamic memory allocation to preserve some state until it is needed by the callback. How do you deal with those situations? I guess it depends on the circumstances, obviously, but there's a couple things. First of all, dynamic memory allocation isn't bad, right? It's just you should make sure you know like what you're actually doing. So my first question is, can you just use a simple free list like we use? That's usually, basically you can think of it this way. A general purpose allocator is usually just a bunch of free lists that a bunch of additional code has to run to figure out what free list to use when you need some memory, right? And then it has to split things up and merge them together and do all this extra work. Most times, even with dynamic memory, you can be like, well, most of the things I do are about 64 bytes long, and I usually only have about 1,000 of them total. So I can just use a free list with of things that are 1,000 bytes, 1K or whatever, and I'm done, right? And everything that allocates something just grabs one of those and pretends the size is whatever the size you actually want, and then does it, and then you return it back to the free list. Then you have literally no memory allocation overhead whatsoever, right? It's like 2 instructions or something, to make this happen. Well, 2 instructions, 10 instructions to allocate and 10 instructions to free or something, and nothing can ever go wrong, right? There's no possibility of fragmentation. There's no possibility that you run out of memory. There's no nothing. You just know like that's what you do. So I would say I would never think of things in terms of how do I avoid dynamic memory allocation in the sense of sometimes I need one of these and sometimes I don't. That's perfectly fine and a very normal thing in programming. The question is just, do you actually need a full general purpose allocator, and is that really the best way to write the code? Or are you just using it because you learned to call new and delete at some point and never really thought through what the program was actually doing? Are those actually the best way to do this thing? Right? Would the Handmade debug view enable viewing structs like world mode? Yeah, you can print out any value that you want. So if you wanted to see stuff in the world mode, you could print it out. Long Boolean, when moving diagonally, will it be clear to the player which way the body will go to get to the diagonal entity? Right now it seems kind of random. So I guess I don't know if it will be clear or not. And I guess what I would say about that is I don't know if you'll even be allowed to move diagonally, if that makes sense. I'll have to think about that. You may just not be allowed to move diagonally. We'll see. What I'll probably do, what I'll probably do is make a decision at some point about what it feels like, because that's a very feel-oriented thing. I'll make a decision about what it feels like, and if I decide that moving diagonal feels good, then we'll probably just make the picking code for these be so that in this middle area here, if you hit here, it does the diagonal, so that it never goes to either of those when you move diagonally. It won't rook. Because you can see that actually sometimes it does actually do the straight diagonal more or less, because it picks this guy. You get to this guy before it ever really goes to one of these. So I could make it so that it would pick the diagonal in here if it wanted to. Like I could hack SOAR that. In fact, actually, it'd be really easy to do that, I think, already. So there's two ways that we could do this, right? So the way that I'm doing it right now is I'm looping over the points and choosing a point based on which one is closest to my head's position. But there's a different way that I could do it, right? I could do a very different thing here. What I could do instead is I could create the direction, like desired direction. And the desired direction would be what's my head's position minus my current position. And that's like a vector from the body to the head, right? And so then what we would do is when we actually do this testing, instead of testing the length, so instead of testing the distance between them, what I'll do instead is I would test how closely does moving to this point align with my movement in the direction that I'm pointing, right? So if I look in this direction, which points do I see closest to like that heading, right? And so I can weight that factor in there. So that would just be, that's just an inner product, right? So I can do like we have normalizer 0, right? I'm assuming. Do we have normalizer 0? So we don't have normalizer 0? Man. All right, well, so there's a function that I like, which is called normalizer 0. And what that is it's basically an automatic epsilon check. It sort of says, well, okay, figure out what the length of this thing is. Right? And if that length is not greater than some, like, you know, if it's going to be, I don't know what we want as our epsilon there. But if the length is greater than that, then actually do the normalize. Otherwise, just return 0. Right? So basically, we just say, like, okay, the result does equal what it would normally equal, but only in the case where I have determined first that it won't blow up if I do that. So it'll just become the 0 vector. Normalizer unit is another example that would return a unit vector instead. And so if we have this desired direction in here, then what I can do is I can inner product that, right? I can take the inner product of that direction with the direction to the various points. So in this case, like I can have, or I should say test direction. Maybe test delta is a better name for this. This is going from, I guess, let me name these more explicitly. So this is head to point, right? And this is body to point. right? So this is the vector that goes from my head to the point, and this is the vector that goes from my body to the point, right? So if I want to know how far away I am, I can test the length of the vector head to point, which is what we were doing, and that's the previous way we were working on it. But if I want to know whether or not moving to this thing would be roughly in the same direction as the head is from me, then I can add another term here, which is like, you know, my test direction, and that's just the inner product of the body to point and the desired direction. Now the problem is this thing will be scaled by how far away the thing actually is. So it'll be, you know, it'll be the cosine of the angle between them, right? So it would be 1 if it was directly pointed in the same direction, -1 if it's the opposite direction, 0 if it's perpendicular, right? But then it's going to be scaled by the distance. And unfortunately for us, we don't actually want that, because that would mean that it gets higher as it gets further away, which we would actually want, if anything, the opposite of that. So in addition, we probably want to normalize that vector as well. So now we just have a measure of how closely it's pointing towards us, right? So now we could sort of say like, oh, the closest distance squared is not really closest distance squared anymore. You know, it could be closest distance squared, and it could be, you know, we can now use this test direction to say, well, it's got to be the closest thing, and it also has to be like within some you know, reasonable range. So this thing, in fact, I suppose since this is the more expensive operation, I could put it on the inside too, and I'd say, well, all right, if it's better than the previous closest thing that we've got, then what we'll do, because we're not going to take it otherwise or whatever, then what we'll do is say, well, let's also see whether it's within sort of that desired direction. So here's our test direction. We want to say it's pretty close, maybe, to that. What did I do here? Yeah. So now we kind of filter out on something that's got to be roughly in the same direction as the head is pointing, right? I'm not sure why that is able to stand in the middle. Oh, I understand why it's able to stand in the middle. Yeah. So this closest P also, I guess, has to always be, like, this has to be wherever it thinks it's going to be standing. So in order to not always pick the closest point, we would also have to do this. So, yeah. That's something that we would want to store for future use, or we would always pick both. So we'd say, like, if we hadn't picked yet, like, you know, we'd say picked any equals false or whatever. And then I suppose in here we would say something like, okay, if the closest is, we'd say if we haven't picked any, or the test direction is greater than that. Then we'd say picked any equals the tester. Oops. Something like that. Oops. Let's take a look. See if that was any better. So I'm not sure why I get that sort of wiggliness there. I guess, yeah, I'm still not quite doing that correctly. So I would need to do a little bit more there. I need to say, like I said, I need to know like where you're going, and then I need to like pick a new one based on that. But it's pretty much this is roughly the code. I just need a little more time to get it a little bit better. But basically, like, if you haven't picked any, if none of them have been in like off in the direction, then you still want to keep the closest one. But if you haven't picked any, if you haven't found one that actually does pass the tester test, then yeah, then off you go. But I gotta think. I guess it's because as you move. Yeah, I guess what I would say is I need a little more time to write that well, because there's actually a number of reasons why I also want to be able to know, like, I'm coming from here, I need to know that old point, because I'm always going to want to use the old point, the original point that you start from. And since we're going to have to do a bunch of animation stuff here anyway, I guess what I would say is, yeah, that's not good enough. So I'm going to leave it the way that it was before, because this is not good enough to actually replace it yet. But we can eventually replace it. So there's the original back again. But it won't be too hard. It's just a question of having the right variables so we can know what it was that that you were sort of doing. And again, I also want, like I said, the head is going to have to do some snapbacks, so we have to code that as well. This may just be an illusion, but it looks like the body is snapping to the corner of the tiles. Usually in tile-based games, entities occupy the center of a tile. So no, that is the center of a tile. Remember, the tiles are actually... We're drawing the traversable points, not the corners. There is no collision volume for the floor tiles at the moment. But let's see here. What is it? Floor collision? Make simple floor collision. So yeah. So make simple floor collision. If I was to actually put in the volume part of this, so if I said there was a volume count of 1 and it had, well, you get the idea. If I was actually to put these in there and then draw them, let me go ahead and, because that stuff is done at startup, so. Now you can actually see the tiles themselves, and so you can see that, like, it is standing on the center of the tiles. Right? Let's see, other cues in the loop. At the end of the Q&A, can you announce a reminder that the forums are going down shortly? Sure. I thought they were already down. I thought someone said 6. I guess it was around 6. But I will announce that, yes. All right. So anyway, but yeah, like I said, I don't actually want there to be any collision volumes for the floor at the moment. Okay. So let's go ahead and close up shop. Lovely. Um, okay. Now we're all closed up. Thank you everyone for joining me for another episode of Handmade Hero. It's been a pleasure coding with you as always. If you would like to follow along at home, you can always do so by pre-ordering the game on handmadehero.org. It comes with the source code so that you can experiment with it and, you know, that sort of thing. We have a forum site, but the forums are going down now or very soon because this weekend they're getting moved. They're actually going somewhere else. They're going to Handmade Network on a new forum system or something. I don't actually know the specifics. Basically, I hate running forums. I hate anything web related, really, let's be honest. So the Handmade Network people have a bunch of forum stuff that they were working on, so that's where that's going to live from now on, and so pretty soon that will be the case. But I believe they'll be down this weekend, which is basically just them migrating them and doing testing on them to make sure that they're working. And then they'll reopen on Monday, I guess, or sometime next week when people are relatively sure that the forums are not, you know, going to eat all your data or self-destruct or anything like that. So that's what's happening, and keep an eye out on that. If you need to know what's going on with that, you can just click on this link, and it'll come to this page. And this page will presumably, you know, there's the code discussion button. This will presumably go down soon, and we'll have something in its place that says, like, come back later. So you should be able to sort of keep tabs on it through the weekend by checking that, or rather next week when it's back up by coming there. We have a Patreon page you can also subscribe to if you want to support the video series, which is always much appreciated. And we also have a tweet bot that tweets the schedule at you if you would like to know when the series is going to be live. That'll get updated this weekend with the schedule for next week, so be sure to check that if you're interested. And that's about it. Have a good weekend programming, everyone, and I will see you on the internet. Take it easy, everybody.